regarding HB 581 to order. Nina Gupta, would you please call the roll?
Representing Educational District 1, Ms. Katie Howard.
Present.
Representing Educational District 2, Ms. Loretta Bolden.
Present.
Representing Educational District 3, Dr. Ken Zeff.
Present.
Representing Educational District 4 and Vice Chair Jennifer McDonald. Representing Educational District 5 and Chair Erica Mitchell.
Present.
Representing Educational District 6, Mr. Tolton Pace.
Present.
Representing at-large seat 7, Mr. Alfred Chivy Brooks. Representing at-large seat 8, I'm sorry, that was seat 7, Mr. Brooks. At-large seat 7, Ms. Cynthia Briscoe Brown.
Seat 8, present.
Say seat 8, I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
a little confused.
I'm still
Morning.
present.
Thank you. And representing at-large seat 9, Ms. Jessica Johnson. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, General Counsel Gupta. Is there a motion to approve February 3rd, 2025 special call meeting agenda for APS first hearing regarding HB 581?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Briscoe Brown, second by Board Member Pace. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. At this time, we would like to have Dr. Bracken to come up to give us an overview of the HB 581 and APS position. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Good morning, Board Chair Mitchell, members of the board. So yes, I'll provide a quick overview of what House Bill 581 is, our recommendation for the district's position on House Bill 581. Also, we've brought some handouts at the back that is some other tax relief measures that we've done research on and have pulled together. So I want to make sure that people know that those handouts are in the back. So the homestead exemption caps property value increases for homesteaded properties and limits the revenue growth to the prior year's consumer price index. It impacts school funding because we do rely heavily on local property taxes. More than 75% of our revenue comes from property taxes. It does include a opt-out provision. It is our recommendation that the district opt out of House Bill 581. For the opt-out process, we will hold these 3 public hearings, the first today, right now, and then one this evening at 6 p.m. And on February 13th, we will have February 10th, we will have the final public hearing at 10 a.m., and we will ask the board to take a vote on our recommendation. The average revenue loss for the district is expected to be between 20 and 30 million in the first year, and that does grow every year. This large decrease would impact our ability to fund programming and would affect staff, students, and other faculty members. School funding reductions could directly affect the quality of education that we're able to offer. APS is already facing significant budgetary challenges in the FY 2026 budget development process. And while we do aim to become less reliant on fund balance in the upcoming years, the current budget does already include a $74 million usage of fund balance. So we do need those recurring revenues in order to become less dependent on those one-time revenues. The multi-year forecast assumes annual inflationary increases, and we do depend on that local revenue, as I mentioned, for multi-year investments. We have a history of working with the legislation process to offer homestead relief and property for property value increases. We increased our homestead exemption from $30,000 to $50,000, and then removed a sunset on that. The history, we've also worked in last year for targeted relief for seniors, and we have decreased our millage rate from 21.74 to 20.74 in 2018, and in 2022, we decreased that from 20.74 to 20.5. We commit to continuing to work with our local legislation to offer targeted tax relief in the upcoming years. Do you have any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Any questions? Board Member Briscoe Brown?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the commercial digest as opposed to the residential?
So the commercial digest does tend to be undervalued. Specific properties are greatly undervalued, and so we do want to continue to work. That is one of our legislative priorities in this upcoming legislative cycle, is to work on how we can get more of those property values at a higher or more fair assessment value. The other piece of that is they tend to leverage the system as it is to appeal those properties. So about 42% of commercial values are currently under appeal, and only about 12% of residential properties are. And so the handouts at the back do give information for how those who are eligible for an exemption can take advantage of that at a residential level.
And one more. The question I ask every year at just about this time, at just about this event, can you explain the prohibitions or the difficulties that we have in lowering our millage rate any lower than it currently is? Of course, we've lowered it several times over the last decade, and have not raised it in at least the last 13 or 14 years. But we've also lowered it several times. Can you talk about the difficulties in going below where we are now?
Yeah, so most school districts do have a cap on their millage rate of 20 mills. We, as a city school, are waived from that cap, so we are currently able to sit above that 20 mills, and it has just not been legally tested if the district went below that 20 mil, if we could go back above it. And so if we dropped below it, this would be a decision that could potentially tie the hands of future boards, or at least put them in a position where they would need to legally test that if they wanted to go back above 20 mils in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Kinzeff.
Hey, Dr. Brackton, thanks for this update. Can you talk a little bit about targeted tax relief that we expect to be on the ballot this spring?
So the legislation I mentioned previously, we worked with Jason Estevez, Senator Estevez, on homestead exemptions for seniors that would increase that homestead exemption to $100,000. That did not go on the November ballot. We would expect that to be on an upcoming ballot for people to vote on. And then any other new legislation that comes out of this session, we'll keep you abreast of.
I am hearing no more questions. Thank you, Dr. Bracken. All right. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the public for attending, and General Counsel Gupta, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Madam Chair, we do.
Okay, we can start with
Good morning and welcome to the public comment portion of today's agenda. In just a few moments, the board will begin hearing from those who properly signed up to speak. The board welcomes your comments, but before we get started, please take note of the following guidelines on how public comment is conducted. The board has allocated this time for public comment, and each speaker will only be allowed to speak once for a total of 2 minutes. The board may elect to hear comments in any order or sequence consistent with board policy and is not limited by the order of any sign-up sheets. In order to maintain meeting decorum, follow appropriate protocols, protect the confidentiality of students, and ensure impartiality, the board will not hear comments on matters involving individual students, parents, or their character, professional competence, or the physical or mental health of any individual. Also, the board will not hear public comment on personal matters that specifically include the names or titles of employees. This includes contract non-renewals, position abolishment, the hiring or firing of staff, and investigative proceedings regarding allegations of misconduct. Comments regarding personnel issues should be sent in writing to Atlanta Board of Education, 130 Trinity Avenue Southwest, Atlanta, Georgia, 30303, or via email at boardcomments@atlantapublicschools.us. Finally, in order to maintain meeting decorum and ensure all comments can be heard by the board, applause, cheering, jeering, or speech that defames individuals or stymies or blocks meeting progress should be refrained from and may be cause for removal, adjournment of the meeting, and or suspension from attending future Atlanta Board of Education events, hearings, meetings, and or other proceedings. If any individual disrupts the meeting, the board chair will issue a warning to cease the disruptive behavior. If disruptive behavior continues, the individual will be asked by the board chair to leave the meeting and may be escorted by personnel if necessary. With that said, I'd like to call the first speaker to the microphone, and that is Jonathan Barheit.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being our board and working through this complex issue and supporting our community and students. I'm here specifically about the school property taxes. If there's an opt-out, I do support a data-driven approach, provided it's multifaceted. So the traditional methods are not working for us. We need to move forward and look at additional options. A few ideas. We can implement a more nuanced assessment system that relies on income, family size, and occupation. We can move towards graduated tax rates, which allow our brackets to move based on lower end and middle income homeowners. We can move our exemptions to be need-based, so increase the ones for seniors, veterans, and low income. Our homestead overall, we can provide a percentage-based reduction rather than the flat reductions we're currently providing. We can provide circuit breaker programs where we can establish programs that limit the amount of property taxes a homeowner must pay as a percentage of income. We can move towards tax deferral programs, allowing especially our elderly to defer property taxes until the property is sold or they pass away with interest accrued to the deferred amounts. We can offer new tax credits for specific groups, home buyers for the first time they're buying, homeowners with disabilities, those who invest in energy efficient upgrades. We can move towards tax dynamic rates based on the wildly varied economic conditions we're seeing currently. We can move towards community land trusts, which would allow affordable housing options to see reduced property taxes, for low and moderate income homeowners. We can do more data-driven decision-making. We can look at the analytics to identify areas where tax relief is most needed to monitor the effectiveness of the existing programs and move forward programs. A challenging one would be to take a look at intergovernmental cooperation. I know that's really challenging to look at other school districts, city, and look at administrative costs.
And that's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lou Provosti.
Hi, folks. Lou Provosti. Again, thank you for all you do. Appreciated. Doctor, you mentioned an age opt-out or something related to homestead exemption amount based on maybe an older age to go up. Do you have a number on that age? Okay. You don't have a number, like 65 or 70? I am new to this process. First time I've been to a board like this. I have pleasure to hear superintendent speak at a neighborhood meeting. I think all neighborhoods care about education. So a concern about cost of education, don't think should be construed as someone doesn't care about our children just because they care about how much it costs to process. So I have heard that as a response. I want to be board member to questions about how much it costs. But I also think that you, over the past several years, you've had an enormous increase in the money that you've gotten because property taxes have risen steeply over the past 5 years, and approximately 50% of that goes to the school board. So you already have had enormous increase in cost, and certain metrics are still look quite poor. So it would seem to me that no matter throwing more money at the issue is not working. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carla Friend.
Morning. The first point I want to make is that when this bill was on for voting, it was something of deception. Point it talked about excuse me. You know, it talked about the homestead exemption, but it also included the part that the school district could opt out. Of course, I agreed with the exemption part, the statewide exemption part, but I didn't agree with the, you know, giving the school boards the opportunity to opt out. So at some time, you know, it's the way it was set up, it was conflicting. I live in the Old Fourth Ward. When I first moved there, it was Bedford Pine. I've lived over there for almost 40 years in a small one-story bungalow. The time I moved up there, my property taxes, even with the homestead exemption I have, and the ones that I get for being an old person, because I'm retired and over 70 years old, you know, the highest increase on my taxes is always school. I'm on a fixed income. And as we know with the current administration, that income is not going to get any higher. I'm trying to save onto my stay on my property. I've lived in that house for almost 40 years. I paid my property taxes every year. I appeal when I can. The area that I live in, the Old Fourth Ward, has zoomed.
And that's time, Ms. Friends.
Zoomed. Most of the
Ms.
properties
Friends,
that are
that's
over
time.
there, most of the,
Thank you.
pardon?
That's your time. That's 2 minutes. And Madam Chair, that concludes public comment. Sorry, I apologize. I did not have your name on my list. 1 moment. Jessica Lavendier, I apologize.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Lavendier. I live in Midtown, and I live in a bungalow, a small bungalow that I renovated myself, and I'm speaking in opposition of your intent to opt out of the freeze on property assessment, and I wanted to tell you why. It's currently unsustainable to me, these big increases in property values, and that's why I and 62% of Georgia voters voted for this. In the last 2 years, my assessment has gone up 50%. In 5 years, my assessment has gone up 110%. I looked at my neighbors, and it's the same situation. Our assessments and the corresponding taxes have increased by 100% in the last 5 years. I looked at it, while the assessment is very aggressive to residential property owners, it's not for commercial property owners. I compared my property to properties on Piedmont and 10th, Flying Biscuit, Blue Med Spa. Their assessment, 2 of the properties I looked at, they haven't changed since 2019. One assessment has increased by 12% since 2019. Then I compared my rate of assessment versus theirs. My house is assessed at $266 a square foot. The commercial properties are assessed at $40 to $90 a square foot. When looking at the total assessment, my property is assessed at $148 a square foot, and the commercial properties are assessed between $75 and $130. So residential properties are assessed at a higher rate than commercial property owners. So we're bearing a bigger share of the burden with these drastic increases in assessment, and there's very little relief. And as I said, I looked at my neighbors and my taxes to APS in 1 year. The assessment, the amount we paid to APS increased between 20 and 40%, and over the 5 years, the amount of taxes
And
we've paid
Ms.
is
Lavendier,
increased to
that's
35%. We need relief.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, that concludes our public comment.
Thank you, General Counsel Gupta. Just as a note, the next hearing date is set for today at 6 p.m., right before our legislative meeting, and the third hearing date is set for February 10th at 10 a.m. With that being said, is there a motion to adjourn the February 3rd special call meeting hearing for HB 581?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved by Board Member Briscoe Brown, second by Board Member Baldwin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.